We turn our attention to the House floor, where freshman Democratic Congresswoman Rivas of California delivered a powerful indictment of Republican priorities under the Trump administration. Rivas, an engineer turned legislator representing the San Fernando Valley, stood before her colleagues to ask a simple but devastating question. While American families struggle to afford groceries and pay rent, why is the GOP focused on renaming bodies of water and redefining showerheads?
Enact making further consolidated appropriations for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2026, and for the purposes.
Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2025, the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Rivas, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent for all members to have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material into the record on the subject of my special order hour.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just over a year ago, I was part of a talented and diverse group of 33 freshmen members of Congress. We were veterans, doctors, engineers, lawyers, teachers, small business owners, and state legislators who were sent by our constituents to make their lives better. They sent us to Congress to protect their health care, lower the costs of their groceries, and make life more affordable. Democrats are working on bills that would meaningfully help families deal with the affordability crisis. There are bills that have been introduced that stop price gouging at the grocery store, making housing more affordable, and make healthcare accessible for all. But Republicans have yet to take up any of these proposals. We are in the midst of an affordability crisis, and Republicans are refusing to work with us to address it. We are 13 months into our first term in Congress, and my colleagues and I have yet to see a meaningful piece of legislation from Republicans that makes life less expensive for our constituents. Over the past year, Republicans chose to rename the Gulf of Mexico, redefine what a showerhead is, rename the Kennedy Center, look into annexing Greenland, regulate fridges and gas stoves, and perhaps the most egregious one is to make the largest cuts to healthcare in our country's history in order to give billionaires more tax breaks. The fact that Trump and Republicans are prioritizing these bills over lowering the cost of living is insulting to our constituents. I fail to see how renaming the Gulf of Mexico, redefining the definition of a showerhead, or annexing Greenland will help families in our districts afford groceries or pay their rent. Because of Donald Trump and Republicans' policies, families across the country paid an average of over $1,600 more due in everyday expenses. Californians are paying over $2,300. However, you know who is benefiting from the Trump administration? Billionaires. With the big ugly bill, Trump and Republicans have implemented the largest cuts to health care in the history of our country and worsened the affordability crisis just to line the pockets of their billionaire donors. The big ugly bill is also the largest cut to food assistance in American history. The bill cut SNAP benefits by 20% for all participants, or roughly $200 billion, jeopardizing SNAP benefits for more than 40 million people, including 16 million children and 8 million seniors who rely on this for nutritional assistance. Republicans turned their backs on making life affordable for our most vulnerable in order to help billionaires afford another yacht. My House Democratic Caucus freshman colleagues and I are focused on making life better for the American people and driving down grocery prices, utility bills, rent and mortgage payments, and childcare and elder care costs so that hardworking people can breathe easier. To help working families, especially multi-generational households, deal with the rising costs of living, I'm introducing the Multi-Generational Family Tax Credit Act. My bill gives multi-generational families a tax credit for expenses that they incur when they upgrade their houses to make them more accessible for their aging parents who live with them. This includes upgrades like grab rails in the shower, an additional bathroom or bedroom, or even a go up and down stairs. This tax credit will help multi-generational families afford to make the upgrades necessary for seniors to age gracefully in one place. Tonight, we will hear from some of the freshmen of the Democratic caucus and the work that they are doing to make life more affordable for their constituents. I now yield 4 minutes to my colleague and friend from the great state of California, Congressman George Whitesides.
Congresswoman Luz Rivas, a first-term Democrat from California's San Fernando Valley, stood before an almost empty chamber tonight and laid bare what many Americans have been feeling in their wallets, at the grocery store, and in their medicine cabinets. Her message was blunt. While families are drowning in an affordability crisis, the Republican majority has busied itself with what can only be described as legislative performance art. In the 13 months since this Congress was sworn in, the GOP-controlled House has prioritized renaming the Gulf of Mexico, redefining federal showerhead standards, and entertaining the geopolitical fantasy of annexing Greenland. These are not the concerns of a working mother in Fresno trying to decide between groceries and medication. These are not the priorities of a senior citizen in Ohio watching their SNAP benefits evaporate. These are, to borrow Congresswoman Rivas's word, insulting. The so-called Big Beautiful Bill, which Democrats have pointedly rebranded as the Big Ugly Bill, represents the largest cuts to health care and food assistance in American history. We are talking about $200 billion slashed from SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program that feeds 40 million Americans, including 16 million children and 8 million seniors. Let that number sink in. 16 million children, in the wealthiest nation on earth. Congresswoman Rivas made sure we understood it. The average American family is now paying $1,600 more annually in everyday expenses under Trump-era policies. In California, that figure climbs to $2,300. Meanwhile, the primary beneficiaries of Republican fiscal policy, billionaires, the same donor class that has effectively captured one of America's two major political parties. What makes tonight's speech particularly noteworthy is not just its substance, but its source. Rivas is part of a 33-member freshman class veterans, doctors, engineers, teachers who came to Washington with a mandate to address the kitchen table issues that actually matter to their constituents. Her proposed Multi-Generational Family Tax Credit Act is exactly the kind of targeted, practical legislation that reflects the lived reality of American families. Millions of households today include aging parents who need accessible homes, grab bars, additional bathrooms, stair lifts, and yet it will almost certainly languish while the majority party debates the nomenclature of bodies of water. We saw a freshman Democrat from California make a more compelling case for those principles than any Republican has made in years. She spoke of affordability, of dignity, of allowing seniors to age gracefully in their own homes surrounded by family. She spoke of children who depend on school lunch programs and nutrition assistance to survive. The GOP's response? Silence, procedural maneuvering, and tax cuts for those who need them least.